Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People's Story. My grandmother's house always smelled like cinnamon and old books. Walking through those rooms brought back memories of summer afternoons spent reading in her garden and helping her bake cookies in that ancient kitchen. When she passed away last year, she left me the house in her will. It was a 1960s ranch-style home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, perfectly maintained, but showing its age in all the charming ways old houses do. The problem was that I lived 4 hours away and worked as a city planner, which meant long hours and frequent travel. After months of going back and forth, I made the difficult decision to sell. I wanted to find someone who would love the house the way my grandmother did, not some investor who would gut it and flip it for profit. That's when I discovered that a storm lived next door. Her name was the neighborhood real estate agent, and she believed her business card gave her dominion over the entire block. From the moment she learned I inherited the house, she launched what I can only describe as a campaign of harassment. She would call me at work with unsolicited advice about pricing and marketing. She badmouthed other agents in the area, claiming they were inexperienced or dishonest. She constantly stressed how only she could get the best price because she knew the neighborhood better than anyone. Her pushiness was a massive red flag. I did my research and chose a calm, professional agent who came highly recommended from multiple sources. His name was David, and he had 20 years of experience with a stellar reputation. When I told the neighbor I had chosen someone else, her reaction was immediate and ugly. She told me I was making a huge mistake and that I would regret not using her services. She said David's agency was known for lowball sales and that he would cost me thousands. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me after I politely but firmly declined her services one final time. David officially listed the house 3 weeks later. We had done a thorough market analysis and priced it competitively, but fairly. His agency's professional sign went up on the front lawn, and the listing went live online that same afternoon. I felt good about the decision and was hopeful we would find the right buyer quickly. That feeling lasted exactly 4 days. I was in the middle of a budget meeting at work when my phone buzzed with a call from David. His voice sounded confused and frustrated when I answered. He explained that another agent had been telling people around town that my house was already under contract. Multiple potential buyers had contacted his office asking why the listing was still active if the house was already sold. David had no idea what was happening and wanted to know if I had somehow signed with another agent without telling him. Before I could even process what he was saying, my phone chimed with a text message. The number wasn't saved in my contacts, but I recognized it immediately. It was sickeningly cheerful and read like she had just won the lottery. The message said she had fantastic news and that she had found the perfect buyers for my grandmother's house. According to her, they had fallen in love with the property and signed an offer. She claimed she knew she could get it done faster than David and said she would email me the paperwork to sign right away. The message ended with congratulations and multiple exclamation points. My phone felt cold in my hand. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a coup. A woman I had explicitly refused to hire was claiming she had sold my property from under me. I told David I would call him back and immediately checked my email. Sure enough, there was a message from the neighbor with a poorly scanned attachment labeled "Offer to Purchase." The document looked unofficial and amateurish, like something cobbled together from a template. The offer price was insulting, about 15% below what David and I had agreed was fair market value. The email claimed her buyers were highly motivated and ready to close quickly. She wrote that she'd always known she could handle the sale better than David, and that this proved her point. The tone was smug and self-congratulatory, as if she had just pulled off some brilliant business maneuver. I forwarded everything to David, who called me back within minutes. He was furious on my behalf and confirmed what I already suspected. What she was doing was not just unethical, but potentially illegal. She had no authority to represent my property and was essentially committing fraud by claiming to have sold something that wasn't hers to sell. David advised me to document everything and contact her immediately to demand she stop. He also suggested we consider filing a complaint with the State Real Estate Commission if she continued her unauthorized activities. I decided to call her directly first. I wanted to give her one chance to back down before escalating the situation. When she answered, her voice was bright and cheerful, as if nothing unusual had happened. I kept my tone calm and professional as I explained that she was not my agent and had no permission to represent my property. I told her she needed to stop immediately and retract any claims she had made about having the house under contract. Her response was immediate and defensive. She claimed we had a verbal agreement from a previous conversation, which was an outright lie. She insisted her buyers were highly motivated and that backing out now could make me liable for damages. She was doing me a favor, she said, by arranging such a quick sale. I repeated that she was not my agent and had no authority to act on my behalf. That's when she escalated things significantly. She threatened me with legal action for damaging her professional reputation and wasting her client's time. Then she delivered what she clearly thought was her trump card. She smugly informed me that she had already been to the property and placed a sale pending rider on top of David's sign. That was the final straw. I realized that simply telling her no wasn't enough. She was a bully who would only be stopped by facing real consequences. I needed to turn her own aggression and lies against her. After hanging up, I called David back and explained what had happened. He was livid about the unauthorized sign placement and confirmed that what she was doing violated multiple real estate regulations. That's when we came up with a plan that would let her dig her own professional grave. I would pretend to consider her unauthorized offer. This would lure her into committing even more violations while giving us time to document everything properly. I sent her a carefully crafted email that evening. I wrote that her points about potential legal issues were concerning and that I was willing to review her client's offer. However, I would need their official, fully signed offer along with their mortgage pre-approval letter. As a condition of my consideration, and to ensure full transparency for her buyers, I would be commissioning a new, comprehensive home inspection at my own expense. The hook was perfect. I presented it as wanting everything to be perfectly in order for her clients, making it sound like I was being extra cautious rather than setting a trap. She fell for it completely. Her response came within an hour, and she was practically giddy with excitement. She believed her bullying had worked and that she was about to steal a commission from David. She eagerly agreed to everything and said she would have her buyers forward their documents directly to me. The next morning, I received an email from a couple with financial documents and a signed offer. They seemed like nice people who had been told they were getting a great deal on a perfect house. I almost felt bad for what was about to happen to them, but they deserved to know the truth about what they were buying into. Now came the crucial part of the plan. I didn't just hire any inspector. I researched and found the most notoriously meticulous, detail-obsessed home inspector in the region. This guy was a legend in real estate circles for his 100-page reports that documented every single cosmetic scuff and potential issue, no matter how minor. The inspection took an entire day. The inspector crawled through every corner of the house with his camera and measuring tools, documenting everything from outdated electrical outlets to minor settling cracks in the foundation. He was thorough to the point of obsession. The report he delivered was a masterpiece of terrifying detail. While the house was structurally sound and perfectly livable, the report listed dozens of items that sounded absolutely horrifying to anyone not familiar with older homes. Things like galvanized steel plumbing nearing end-of-life expectancy, attic insulation below current recommended levels, minor hairline cracks in the driveway concrete, and an original electrical panel that was functional but didn't meet modern load standards. Each item was described in technical language that made normal wear and tear sound like major safety hazards. The inspector even included photos of every issue, no matter how cosmetic. Next, I assembled what I called a Welcome to the Neighborhood packet for the buyers. It contained the entire unabridged inspection report with the scariest sounding parts highlighted in yellow. I also included printed copies of current city codes for electrical and plumbing work, making it look like immediate upgrades would be required. Then I got quotes from 3 different contractors to address all the issues mentioned in the report. I specifically asked for estimates to bring everything up to current code standards, which resulted in wildly expensive numbers for work that wasn't actually necessary. The centerpiece was a cheerful, disingenuous cover letter that I crafted very carefully. I wrote about how delighted I was that they were interested in my grandmother's home and mentioned how persistent their agent had been in arranging this sale. In the spirit of the complete honesty she championed, I had attached some documents for their review. I explained that the brand new inspection report outlined some vintage quirks of the house that I was sure they would want to modernize immediately. I had even gathered some quotes, and as they could see, bringing the home up to current standards would be quite a project, but certainly a rewarding one. Since their agent was pushing for a quick close, I assumed they were prepared to handle these costs after the sale. The letter ended with how excited I was to have them as neighbors and was signed with warm regards. I emailed this entire package directly to the buyers and crucially copied the neighbor on the message. Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks. The reaction was swift and spectacular. Within an hour, I received a furious email from the buyers withdrawing their offer. They accused their agent of misrepresenting the property and said they had been told the house was in perfect condition. The inspection report and contractor quotes had revealed that they would need to spend tens of thousands of dollars just to make the house safe and up to code. They demanded to know why their agent hadn't disclosed any of these issues and said they felt deliberately misled about the true condition of the property. The email was copied to the neighbor, so she received the same scathing message I did. My phone rang 20 minutes later. When I answered, the neighbor was absolutely unhinged. She was screaming, crying, and threatening all at the same time. I calmly put the phone on speaker and started recording the entire tirade. In her rage, she incriminated herself completely. She yelled about how she had told the buyers the house was perfect and that I had set her up deliberately. She said she had worked hard for that commission and that my crooked inspector had ruined everything. She accused me of sabotaging her business and threatened to sue me for damages. I waited for her to finish her rant before responding calmly that I was just being transparent with potential buyers, something I was sure the State Real Estate Commission would encourage. I also mentioned that recording phone calls was legal in our state and that I had documented our entire conversation. The line went dead immediately. Over the next few days, David and I compiled everything into a comprehensive package. We had her initial texts and emails claiming to have sold my house, the fraudulent offer she had submitted, photos of her unauthorized sale pending sign placed on David's official listing sign, the angry email from her buyers withdrawing their offer, and the audio recording of her confession-filled rant. We submitted this entire package as a formal ethics complaint to the State Real Estate Commission. The complaint outlined how she had fraudulently claimed to represent my property, submitted unauthorized offers, misrepresented the condition of the house to buyers, and placed unauthorized signage on the property. The commission launched a full investigation within 2 weeks. During the investigation, it came out that this wasn't her first offense. She had received previous warnings for aggressive sales tactics and boundary violations with other properties in the neighborhood. The final ruling came down 4 months later. Her real estate license was suspended for 2 years, and she was hit with a substantial fine. She was also required to take additional ethics training before she could reapply for licensure. Her reputation in the local real estate community was completely destroyed. A few months after the ruling, I noticed a for sale sign from another agency appear on her lawn. Apparently, the legal fees and lost income from her suspension had forced her to sell her own house. Meanwhile, David's professional marketing had attracted several interested buyers. We chose a wonderful young family who received the same detailed inspection report, but were unfazed by the minor issues common in older homes. They understood that the house had character and charm that came with its age. They offered $25,000 over our asking price and closed without a single problem. The sale was smooth and respectful, exactly what I had hoped for when I decided to sell my grandmother's house. The new owners sent me photos after they moved in, showing how they had decorated the rooms while preserving the original character of the house. They even kept my grandmother's garden and promised to maintain it with the same care she had shown. Looking back on the whole experience, I didn't set out to ruin someone's career. I was pushed into a corner by pure greed and entitlement. When someone tries to steal what isn't theirs and lie to innocent people in the process, sometimes the only way to stop them is to let them hang themselves with their own rope. The neighbor learned a hard lesson about property law that day. You can't sell what isn't yours, no matter how much you want the commission. She tried to steal a sale from my actual agent and ended up forfeiting her entire career. I sold my grandmother's house to a family who truly loves it, and the only thing the neighbor managed to sell was her own home to pay for her legal troubles. Some people might call it revenge, but I prefer to think of it as a fully executed contract on karma. The best part is knowing that my grandmother would have approved. She always taught me to stand up to bullies and that the truth has a way of coming out in the end. She would have gotten a kick out of seeing someone who tried to take advantage of her family getting their comeuppance through their own greed and dishonesty. In the end, justice was served. The right family got the house, and I learned that sometimes the most effective response to aggression is to give people exactly what they're asking for. The neighbor asked for transparency and full disclosure, and that's exactly what she got. She just didn't expect it to be used against her. The house sale closed on a beautiful spring day, exactly 1 year after my grandmother had passed away. As I handed over the keys to the new family, I felt like I had honored her memory and protected her legacy from someone who would have exploited it. Sometimes the best way to win is to let your opponents defeat themselves, and that's exactly what happened here. The neighbor's real estate career was over, but my grandmother's house found the perfect family to call it home. That's the kind of ending she would have written herself. Update, 6 months later. I've gotten several messages asking for an update on what happened after my original post, so I figured I'd share how things have played out over the past 6 months. The fallout from the neighbor's actions turned out to be even more extensive than I initially realized. First, the good news. The family who bought my grandmother's house has been absolutely wonderful. They've sent me photos throughout the seasons showing how they've maintained the garden and even added some new touches that my grandmother would have loved. They found some old photo albums in the basement that the moving company had missed, and they drove 4 hours to personally deliver them to me. We've stayed in touch, and it's clear they truly appreciate the house's history and character. As for the former neighbor, the consequences of her actions continued to unfold long after the real estate commission's ruling. About 3 months after my original post, I learned from David that she had tried to appeal the commission's decision. Her argument was that I had deliberately entrapped her, and that the whole situation was a setup designed to destroy her career. The appeal hearing didn't go well for her. The commission reviewed all the evidence again, including the recording of her unhinged phone call where she admitted to misrepresenting the property to her clients. They not only upheld the original suspension, but extended it to 3 years after determining that her appeal showed no remorse or understanding of her violation. But here's where it gets really interesting. During the investigation process, other people in the neighborhood started coming forward with their own stories about her aggressive and unethical behavior. Apparently, my situation wasn't isolated. One couple shared that she had shown their house to potential buyers without permission while they were out of town, claiming she had a lockbox code from a previous listing agreement that had expired months earlier. Another neighbor revealed that she had been telling people his property was available for sale when he had never even considered selling, just because she wanted to farm leads in the area. The most shocking revelation came from an elderly man who lived 3 streets over. He told the commission that she had pressured him into signing a listing agreement while he was grieving his wife's death, using tactics that bordered on elder abuse. She had convinced him he needed to sell immediately to avoid financial ruin, when in reality his finances were perfectly stable. These additional complaints resulted in the commission opening a broader investigation into her business practices. They discovered a pattern of boundary violations, misrepresentation, and aggressive tactics that had been going on for years. Several of her past transactions were reviewed, and at least 2 sales were found to have involved questionable practices. The real estate agency she worked for initially tried to distance themselves from the scandal, claiming she had been acting independently. However, when it became clear that they had received multiple complaints about her behavior over the years and failed to take action, they faced their own investigation. The agency ended up paying significant fines and was required to implement new oversight procedures for their agents. The neighbor's attempts to rebuild her career have been unsuccessful. Even after her suspension period ends, she'll need to find a new brokerage willing to take her on, and her reputation in the local real estate community is completely destroyed. I heard through David that she had tried to get licensed in a neighboring state, but the reciprocity requirements meant her disciplinary record followed her there too. Her financial situation appears to have deteriorated significantly. The house sale I mentioned in my original post was apparently forced by mounting legal bills and lost income. She had to sell for less than market value because word had gotten around the neighborhood about her unethical practices, and many potential buyers were wary of purchasing from someone with her reputation. There's been some drama in the neighborhood as well. A few of her supporters initially tried to paint me as the villain who had destroyed a local businesswoman's career. However, once the full extent of her violations became public knowledge, that narrative quickly fell apart. Most neighbors were actually grateful that someone had finally stood up to her aggressive tactics. The Homeowners Association even passed new guidelines about real estate activities within the neighborhood, specifically prohibiting agents from placing unauthorized signage or representing properties without proper documentation. They cited my case as the reason for implementing these protections. One unexpected consequence has been that David's business has grown significantly. The professional way he handled the entire situation and his willingness to support me in filing the complaint earned him a reputation as an agent who truly advocates for his clients. Several people in the area have specifically requested him because they heard about how he stood up to unethical behavior. As for me, I've learned some valuable lessons about documentation and standing up to bullies. I kept every email, text message, and recorded conversation from the entire ordeal, and that evidence was crucial in proving the extent of her misconduct. I've actually been contacted by other homeowners facing similar situations asking for advice on how to handle aggressive real estate agents. The most satisfying part of this whole experience has been hearing from the family who bought my grandmother's house. They've told me stories about neighbors stopping by to share memories of my grandmother and how much she meant to the community. It turns out she was something of a neighborhood grandmother figure, always baking cookies for new families and organizing informal block parties. The new owners have embraced this tradition and hosted several gatherings in her honor. They've even started a small neighborhood garden club that meets in my grandmother's backyard, continuing her legacy of bringing people together. Knowing that her house has become a center of community activity again would have made her incredibly happy. The contrast between the new owner's positive impact and the former neighbor's destructive behavior couldn't be starker. One brought the community together while the other drove people apart through greed and dishonesty. Looking back, I'm glad I decided to fight back instead of just walking away. It would have been easier to simply accept the harassment and move on, but that would have left her free to victimize other people. By documenting everything and following through with the complaint, we potentially saved other families from similar exploitation. The whole experience reinforced my belief that bullies only understand consequences. No amount of polite requests or reasonable explanations would have stopped her behavior. It was only when she faced real professional and financial consequences that her reign of neighborhood terror finally ended. I've received some criticism from people who think I went too far or that I was unnecessarily vindictive, but I disagree completely. I didn't fabricate evidence or make false accusations. I simply documented her actual behavior and let the proper authorities decide what consequences were appropriate. She destroyed her own career through her choices and actions. The inspection report strategy, which some people have called brilliant and others have called ruthless, was really just giving her exactly what she claimed to want. She demanded transparency and full disclosure for her buyers, so that's exactly what I provided. The fact that the truth was damaging to her scheme was her problem, not mine. My grandmother always taught me that integrity matters more than short-term gains. She would have been appalled by someone trying to profit off her death through lies and manipulation. I like to think that by standing up to that behavior, I honored her memory and the values she instilled in me. The final chapter of this story came last month when I received a handwritten note from the elderly man whose case had contributed to the expanded investigation. He thanked me for having the courage to file the complaint and said that my actions had given him the confidence to speak up about his own experience. He wrote that he felt like justice had finally been served and that his late wife would have been proud of how the community had come together to stop predatory behavior. That note meant more to me than any amount of money or professional vindication could have. Knowing that standing up to one bully helped protect other vulnerable people from similar exploitation made all the stress and conflict worthwhile. The neighborhood is peaceful now. Property values have actually increased since the scandal, partly because the new oversight guidelines have made it a more attractive place to live. The former neighbor's house has been purchased by a quiet family who keeps to themselves and seems grateful for the lack of drama. My grandmother's house continues to be a source of joy and community connection under its new owners. They've invited me to visit several times, and it's wonderful to see how they've preserved her memory while making the space their own. Sometimes justice takes time, but it does eventually prevail. The neighbor learned that you can't build a career on lies and intimidation indefinitely. Eventually, the truth catches up with everyone and the consequences match the actions. I'm grateful that I had the resources and support to fight back effectively. Not everyone facing similar situations has access to good legal advice or the ability to document everything properly. That's why I've tried to share my experience with others who might be dealing with comparable problems. The key lessons from this whole ordeal are simple but important. Document everything, know your rights, don't let bullies intimidate you into silence, and trust that the truth will ultimately prevail if you're persistent enough to see the process through. My grandmother would have been proud of how this all turned out. She always said that good people should stick together and help each other against those who try to take advantage. That's exactly what happened here, and her house found its way to a family that embodies those same values. The story has a happy ending after all. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I worked for a company for just under 5 years. The company I worked for existed for an additional 10 years prior to me. While I worked at this company, it ballooned to be the #1 provider in the region for its unique service with about 75% of the market. It was a small business of about 15 employees. I loved my job, and the skills I learned while working there were quite valuable. I loved my team and the clients we provided services for. My twice-yearly reviews with the owner were always 10/10ths, with no recommendations for improvement. I was exceptional at my job in every way. I handled company operations, HR, payroll, customer service, marketing, employee management, schedules, employee and client training, and many other things at this company. I was also able to step in and do any of my teammates' jobs if they were out sick or on vacation. The owner of the company was giving out a bonus late summer last year, and mine, while being more than previous years, was notably less than my teammates. I asked owner, are the bonuses related to performance, and if so, what could I have done to earn more? Owner replied, the bonuses are not performance related, you are just more replaceable than the others. Oh, okay, I replied, and I proceeded to process each of the bonuses, then went to lunch. I called my spouse to gain wisdom and advice. I was pretty lit, but didn't want to make a rash decision. My spouse is very intelligent, and while they are not a fortune teller, they have an ability to foresee various responses and all the potential outcomes. They are business-wise and have been on the executive team of a large company for the past 21 years, while also serving on several community boards and business advisory boards. We decided together to continue forward with our scheduled vacation and use the time away to calm our minds, relax, have fun, and to also determine the best course of action for me. We were leaving after working one more day, so I worked like all was normal the rest of the day and the following day, then left on vacation. While away, we discussed several scenarios, the potential outcomes, consulted with a business advisor and a business attorney. With all the advice I received, I determined that upon my return from vacation, I would resign from my role with a 2-week notice. However, in a fit of rage, I was immediately terminated by owner, which was one of the scenarios we thought would happen, so I was prepared for owner's poor reaction. During the next couple weeks, I created and opened a competing business offering similar services. However, I offered more customizable options with higher quality service and results. I knew our clients wanted these options and had proposed said options several times at Old Workplace, but was never green-lighted to implement the changes for no reason other than owner didn't come up with the idea, so it was a stupid idea. I also maintained communications with a few people from my old team. My old team did not relay the day-to-day happenings at my previous workplace, and I never asked about the company. However, they would vent to me on occasion. I would listen without comment. I knew service, quality, and the work environment in general suffered since my departure. Morale went down and clients were less satisfied. I also read the Google and Facebook reviews for old company. Yikes. Additionally, 2 full-time and 1 part-time persons were hired to fill my role, and a portion of my responsibilities, like HR and payroll, were filled by outside companies. I quickly built up my business, and within 3 months was able to hire several of my old teammates. They were able to jump in on day 1 with minimal training, as they were the best employees at my old workplace. The quality of previous workplaces' offerings continued to fall, which sent additional business my way, and quickly caused incoming work to be non-existent at Old Workplace. My old workplace went from being the #1 provider of unique service in the region to nothing in a matter of months. My previous employer is now searching for gainful employment. I know this because over the weekend, owner applied for a position at my spouse's company. Side note, I think my spouse's company should bring my previous employer in for an interview, but when they arrive, surprise, I'm the interviewer and all I say is, how replaceable am I now? My spouse, rightfully so, has said, no. Moral of the story, don't tell your employees they are replaceable because they might create a competing business that is better than yours, while taking your best employees and your clients, which will leave you with no business to sell. Owner's whole retirement plan was to sell business, and starting all over by searching for employment under someone else. Looks like your company was replaceable, not me. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Background. I was on a family phone plan with my folks well into my adult years. My dad liked to take the lion's share of the data plan and would send out a passive-aggressive oink oink goes the pig if anyone but him was using too much data. The rest of us had to connect to Wi-Fi whenever possible. We all had a good reason if we got close to using up a quarter of the shared data plan. 4 people on the plan and split 4 ways, but he liked to take his half out of the middle. The 4 of us paid into the plan each month, and in theory it was cheaper than an individual plan. Story. For a birthday, he announced that I was getting kicked off the family plan because I needed to be a man, or some other grown-up nonsense. I think he may have mentioned something about how he hated that my grown relatives were doing something similar and needed to grow up. The details are fuzzy, but this wasn't the first time, nor the last, that B would announce unpleasant things at birthdays and holiday family gatherings, so I took it in stride and switched to an independent phone plan. I got the cheapest, most basic data plan, and it ended up being comparable to what I was paying into the family plan. I also realized just how little I actually use my data, and the plan was actually fairly comfortable for my needs, so I stuck with it. Fallout. A year later, he brings up the idea of getting me back into the family plan because getting me off the plane ended up not only costing the individual more money per person, the phone carrier also had a deal going on where the more people connected to one plan, the less expensive per person the overall plan would be. Some sort of wholesale or group discount or another. I told him that I was perfectly happy with my independent phone plan paying my own rate. I also reminded him that the only reason why I got off it to begin with was because he didn't think I was being a responsible grown adult. I simply wanted to prove to him that I can manage all of my own bills like a real adult, unlike others in my family he liked to complain about. He tried asking me a few more times about it throughout the months because it would be so much cheaper for him, but I continually brought up how much he hated my relatives that refused to grow up, and that he wanted me to not be like them per his gift on my birthday. I stuck with it because while I could have access to more data that I could use, the absence of snarky texts about being a data hog was more than worth the price. The next one is an entitled people story. This all started because earlier this year I bought a hoopity for a car and was driving around unsafely for a while until about May my grandma had reached out to me and offered to take from my predetermined inheritance amount to buy me a better and more functioning car. The hoopity would break down every paycheck and I wasn't able to get ahead at all. At first I was hesitant as my grandma has always been known to retract her gifts, but seeing as though I was going deeper into the debt hole and she made it seem like I was buying it from my predetermined fund, I accepted it, and she lent me the money out of that account. I was grateful and thanked her through the full process. I went and picked the car up, had it put in my name, etc. The car has been great and no complaints. Halfway into June, she brought up the topic of the car, and when I was going to pay her back, for reference, it was about $20K, I said I didn't know she wanted me to pay her back, but I would, and she asked the payments to start this August. I agreed to $200 a month starting August, while also maintaining $669 insurance a month for full coverage insurance. She asked me to keep on the car. I have had no problems doing so, as I'm grateful to not have to worry about if my car will start this time or not. So, continuing on to about 3 weeks ago, my friend and I were, playing car tag. He was following me through a neighborhood and he thought I was going the wrong way. I had my blinker on and was committed to a turn. He decided to overtake me and blast right into the front end of my car. I wasn't mad. I understand accidents happen. I figured calling my grandma to let her know the car was hit and would be in the shop. $2K in repairs, which I was willing to pay for myself. A pin was snapped on my axle or something like that, I'm not too sure. But my grandma had a very nasty reaction to it. Rightfully so. But fast forward to, now my car is getting out of the shop today, and she has expressed that she doesn't want me driving the car anymore because she thinks I'm not responsible enough to have my own car. I was confused and taken back by her statement because my accident wasn't entirely my fault. She then proceeds to say I never even attempted to pay her back. I was again confused because I've been saving up for my August payments to start. I pointed out she said I had until August to start paying, and she then responded with, I would like the car back, I will pay for the title transfer. I told her I wasn't interested in giving the car back after I just paid for the repair and am stuck paying the insurance until next year. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong considering yes, I did get into an accident, but she led me to believe I had paid for it out of my inheritance and would pay it back this August. I'm not sure if I'm overreacting, but I'm confused and would like unbiased opinions, please. Anyway, thank you for watching.